what on earth do we do about it? Or what have we been doing about it? I think if anybody other than my mother listens to this podcast, I'd imagine they're skipping to these. Hello, and welcome to another conversation for the Medico Digital Podcast. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Joe Reid, account manager extraordinaire, paid media master, and Tottenham fan. Hello, Joe.
Hello. You set the bar high there, but it finished on a low.
It did finish on a low. It did. I'm sorry to have made that unfortunate part of your personality public.
That's fine. And I can just see Saka in the background there as well. Perfectly aligned.
So we are here to talk about how much Zuck has shafted us over the recent couple of months. And I don't know whether it's a full shafting or if it's okay. And what I want to do is just use this as maybe some public therapy to talk through some of our problems and work out how we're solving them. I think from my perspective as well, like Meta is great. It's a great advertising set of platforms across Facebook and Instagram, but it's always been a bit of a second-class citizen, especially when it comes to patient acquisition, getting in front of patients, because quite rightly, you can't obviously target people by their problems, their healthcare problems. And if somebody's got a healthcare problem, then they're going to be searching for an answer or a solution to what their problem is. And if they don't currently have that problem, they probably don't really want to be seen targeted on Meta while they're browsing Instagram for something like a hip replacement or a colonoscopy if it's not particularly relevant to them. So it's always been a case of great for awareness, great for retargeting, great for adding additional value to maybe a primary search campaign when trying to get in front of patients. But nevertheless, when they deplete our options for targeting or make things work in a way that's not quite as seamless, it can always be damaging to, I think, the overall marketing mix. So when you guys came kind of late last year and said they're doing it again, Meta still not really recovered from the iOS 14 rollout from all those years ago where they updated the app tracking transparency, I think it was. So every time you go on a new app, it says, do you want to share your data? And everyone clicks no. And then suddenly our custom audiences don't work, retargeting is less efficient, and the cost per acquisition is a lot higher. But before we talk about what they're doing at the moment, might be worth just like recapping for anyone that's unaware how you use Meta at the moment to kind of track people, to get in front of people, to follow people around the internet with adverts that may or may not be relevant to them.
Absolutely.
So, how does it work, Joe?
Well, I guess there's two simple layers to it, right? There's the disruptive element of it, where you can use Meta's ability to target demographics and interests across the platform to get in front of segments of users that we think are going to be relevant to our service or offering. And then you've got everything on the other side, which is the more exciting stuff, being able to retarget users or categorize users and potential patients by activity they carry out on your site, whether they've previously used you as a service or whether they're similar to an existing patient that you have or previously had. So
what is the Meta Pixel to a layman?
To a layman, it's essentially a piece of code that goes on your website and gathers basic information about pages that users visit, actions they carry out or actions they don't carry out. And the Pixel allows you to turn those into, I guess, what we call audiences.
So you could have somebody has come onto your healthcare website, the Meta Pixel has spotted them come through the door into your website, and it follows them around, watches what they're doing. And if they take an action, it can log that as something that they've done. And then it can match that person, I think, in a data secure way to their profile across Meta, so their Instagram account or their Facebook account. So if you go onto a healthcare provider's website and submit an inquiry, you might then have a tick against your name of inquiry submitted, and you could then create a bucket of people on Facebook or on Instagram that are inquiry providers, inquirers, inquisitive inquirers.
Yeah, that's it, pretty much. And I mean, as marketers, we use that data in a couple of ways, right? You create an audience of people that have carried out the action you want them to carry out. You know, they've filled out a form that's led to new patient acquisition, for example, and you have all of those in a pot. And there's a couple of things you can do with that. You can turn it into what we call a lookalike audience. So you can ask Meta, hey, look, here's 300 amazing pieces of data around patients that we've acquired. Can you go and find me 300 more? And you can create a lookalike audience that is of a similar demographic makeup, of a similar interest makeup as well of those users. But the other thing you can do is you can say, hey, Meta, these people have actually already converted into a patient. Don't target them anymore. I want to exclude them. I don't want to spend any of my hard-earned advertising pounds on reaching them with ads that aren't of interest to them anymore.
Nice. I like that you said pounds. I think I hear ad dollars so much. I don't think I've ever even heard anyone say ad pounds.
Too many mention of dollars.
Okay, so that's how we were happily beavering away. November, December of 2024. Everything was great.
Even half of January as well, yeah.
Even half of January. And then Zuck, straight off the jiu-jitsu floor, or whatever it is that he's doing at the moment, decided to come in and tighten up their advertising policies as it relates to healthcare websites. And how much of an understanding do you have around, because I think there are two different areas that we've been in. One is like something's coming, but we don't really know what it is. And then obviously that something has come, and now we do have a better idea of what it was. But I think the policy updates were relatively vague, weren't they, in terms of what was going on?
Yeah, and I think on purpose, right? Like the actual change is a very, very simple one at a top level. I think we're not sure what's going to happen. I think it's more of that was the fallout. We don't know how certain things are going to be react. We don't know what tools or things that we had access to. We might not be able to pull those levers anymore with this change. And yeah, I think it's been rolled out across Europe. I think it's more law related than it is system related. But essentially, yeah, healthcare and other industries have been bucketed into these categories, and limits have been placed on those data sources. The meta pixel that we talked about, the domains that we've talked about from a website perspective. Meta is just no longer accepting data from those websites.
So I have the official policy changes here. So if you are a healthcare provider, you are stuck in Meta's core setup, which means that you are not allowed to provide custom parameters. You're not allowed to pass those through. You're not allowed to pass through folder level URL data, so anything after the .com or .co.uk. You're not allowed to optimize towards mid and lower funnel targeting, so things like inquiries or anything other than kind of awareness activity. And you're not allowed to create or use any custom conversions. Is that right? Have I missed anything there that you can think of?
No, that's pretty much it. And they're all the actions of Meta simply saying, sorry, we're turning that data away. So like the pixels that we have set up on the websites via Google Tag Manager containers, however we originally passed that data through to Meta, advertisers and marketers are still sending that data through. It is now just blocked on Meta's end. So you'll see if anyone kind of still has a pixel and it's running on the site, it may still have a very small heartbeat and a small amount of that core setup data is still being passed through. But where you once saw thousands of daily or monthly hits coming through, all of that data has been rejected by Meta. So we're not able to feed it that valuable information that it does so well with when optimizing campaigns.
Okay, which means we can no longer bucket our inquirers, and we can no longer turn those into lookalike audiences. We can't retarget to them. We can't block them out of our targeting efforts. So our, what was it, hard-earned ad pounds, we might well be spending them on the patients that have already come to see us if we're using Meta at the moment.
That's it, so, right, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of laid out the landscape. What on earth do we do about it? Or what have we been doing about it? I think if anybody other than my mother listens to this podcast, I'd imagine they're skipping to this. What is the solution? What are we doing about it?
Oh, cool. Well, I guess there's two areas to look at, really, isn't it? There's the reporting element, and then there's the optimization element and the strategy part, and how we optimize towards these users that we no longer have as much power in reaching. Yeah, I guess starting from the reporting side of things, it's difficult, right? As is in healthcare, it's very structured and very organized, and often the marketing function always has a higher power to report to. And it's very KPI driven and performance driven. What we're seeing is that as of mid-January, it's very difficult for us to justify the value that the existing Meta budgets have had on the platform, because we're no longer allowed to report or able to report on, we drove X many form inquiries, phone calls, actions across the site on any given page. We're no longer able to provide that data for healthcare providers advertising across Meta. So we're kind of flying blind in that instance. And for a provider to be able to say, look, I'm allocating £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 a month to this channel, but now I have no idea what it's driving me. It's a very, very difficult budget to kind of keep a hold of in that space. And yeah, I think
so is your exclusive answer here boycott Meta?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There are other ways in which we can report performance. We've been doing so using GA4. So we've been using Google Analytics UTM parameters. So on all of the ad URLs that we run that send users through to a landing page, a little piece of kind of tracking at the end of the URL, when that goes through to the website, feeds information into analytics. So we can still report on those users that are coming from Meta to the website to carry out those actions. We lose a little bit of that extra value and magic that Meta had in its very generous attribution model.
And just a note, by the way, if you give away too much of our secret sauce, I'm going to go back and just bleep you out for anything that we don't necessarily want to be giving away for free.
Oh, okay.
I think you're on the right bounds of it at the moment, but just in case. So the tracking, there's a couple of ways around. I think the other thing that you mentioned, which, yeah, tongue in cheek, I was saying boycott Meta, but potentially if it's not as effective, or if you can't justify it as much, then do you potentially need to be looking at other channels, other ways to use that budget and adjusting the fabled marketing mix to balance it out, I suppose, if you were spending a lot of money on Meta before.
You look at 95% of healthcare providers historically up until now, with a lot of other emerging channels and AI, the majority of that budget has been heavily weighted towards search, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those budgets for Meta and for those disruptive channels are always secondary. When things like this happen or their budgets are reduced, they normally are the first things to go. It normally is the luxury channel to be running. So with this impact, not only have we kind of looked at alternatives to reporting and how we can still attribute value from the activity that we are driving, that value is no longer as favorable or as strong as it is across the likes of Google Ads and other search networks. So budget is being moved away from Meta towards those channels.
Yeah, nice. I think for my sins, I'm quite a big Mark Zuckerberg fan. Can you be a fan of just a random person you don't know? I don't know. Maybe I'm just a fan of his persona from that film that he was in. He wasn't in the film about him. I was a big fan of that. Anyway, I've always I'm a big fan of him. I'm not a user of those platforms, but where anything that gets people to look more creatively at how they can spend more of their time and budget on search when it comes to patient acquisition is something that I think I am all for. I think it's something that is weirdly saturated, but also undervalued, I think, in terms of how people are using it, because of going back to what we said at the beginning, where if somebody has a healthcare related problem, they are telling you through a search engine. What that search engine is becoming slightly more disparate, I think, as we move into the future. It's not always just Google these days, but search is still where it's at. And I think if people can take budget that they were spending on a platform like Meta and work out how to effectively spread that back across search, I think that's going to be ROI positive. I think the other thing to maybe talk about is how Meta can be used with that in mind, with the fact that people in social media are in a different mindset to where they are when they're searching for healthcare provider-based solutions to a condition or a problem that they have. And that is that they don't necessarily want to be just put in front of with ads that are specifically about what a healthcare provider offers. And I think if this change makes people be a bit more creative and thoughtful in how they approach Meta, that's not necessarily a bad thing either, because something that we've long been championing, like better use of first-party data. There was the fears about the cookieless internet, and all platforms are kind of pushing privacy as much as they can at the moment, which is making, in a lot of places, the type of data attribution that we've had in the past, not just this very acute version of what Meta have done, but it's something that's been kind of slowly evolving over the last couple of years anyway. If you can be an owner of that data, if you can communicate better with patients or potential patients directly, that puts you in a strong position. It probably puts you in like the 1% of healthcare providers as well, because nobody, I don't think, is doing this well at the moment. And where Meta sits within that is, and something we haven't mentioned, is they haven't gotten rid of our ability to use lead forms and in-platform ways of signing people up and getting access to people's information. So where they are cutting down on sending people to outside of the Facebook platform onto websites, and it's that passing through of healthcare related data back and forth that they're not so happy about, we absolutely can be putting people in front of sign up forms, lead forms within the channel. And I think the way to get people to sign up and to get people's information is to offer them something really relevant and valuable. And if you can do that to the right kinds of people, build that database of first party data for the types of people that are going to be interested in your service, then that puts you slightly ahead of the game in terms of being in control of what you do with that data going forwards. And I think if you can do that well, or the value that you're putting in front of them can be like the magnet that is pulling the needle out of the haystack, to stretch a slightly awkward analogy. But I think despite it being quite a shock and a change to how people are using Meta, I do think it could have potentially positive ramifications for how people are looking at the overall way that they use that channel.
Yeah,
what do you think of
absolutely.
that as a theory?
No, I think that's good. And I think, like, even in its simplest form, sometimes it is just about visibility, right? And being there throughout that user's journey. Sometimes it isn't, you don't just, or you can't just be there for that point of conversion anymore. You can't come in at the end and just swoop in and take, 2 months of online research that a user's been making about a potential healthcare procedure and then take the conversion. It is about being visible throughout that patient's kind of search and awareness journey. And it might start with a search, and they might be using Google or AI to find out what they need and how they need it. But as a healthcare provider, being present and having the brand visible on search and social is a really positive way to keep that brand front of mind as well. Sometimes when that user does make that final search, they're ready to convert if they see that healthcare provider in the search results. After seeing multiple ads about the brand across socials, there's a reinforcement factor there that could lead to kind of a positive action or outcome for that healthcare provider.
Yeah, nice. I think nicely surmised. Before we wrap it up, is there anything there that you would like to say? Anything you think we've missed? If it's about Arsenal, just keep it quiet.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think a lot of time and effort does go into these meta strategies, especially when you're looking at a multi-funnel approach and you have a series of campaigns, and we've seen tens of campaigns in some accounts, all targeting different aspects of healthcare. A lot of work has gone in, and there is still value to be had from that activity, even in a situation where we're maybe not driving the same level of volume of conversions. There are ways that you can still leverage the targeting that Meta have available to get in front of the right users at the right time. There is still hope.
Okay, cool. So yeah, if you've managed to make it through our waffling, our nearly 20 minutes of waffling so far, and you're having problems with your own Meta campaigns, feel free to reach out at hello@medicodigital.co.uk. If you disagree with anything we said, or if you have any complaints, feel free to reach out at joe.reid@medicodigital.co.uk, and all complaints will be taken on board. But look, thank you for coming, Joe. I think that's a wrap, and